All right, good morning, class. How's everyone?
Pretty good.
You guys are good? Awesome. All right, I'm gonna take roll. And shoot, I have, give me 1 second. There's an echo, hold on. All right, let's see. First on the list is Ace.
Here.
Olivia.
Here.
Amelia. Jordan.
Here.
Milo.
Here.
Ruben.
Here.
Jocelyn.
Here.
Kayla.
Here.
Takeshi.
Here.
Jacob. Carlos.
Here.
Darian.
Here.
Darian, you're here. Okay, got you. Axel.
Here.
Larry.
Here.
Charlize.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Ian.
Here.
Nathan. Denisa.
Here.
Andre.
Here.
Patrick.
Here.
Phoenix.
Here.
Vanessa.
Here.
Cody.
Here.
Josue. Emily Menendez.
Here.
Brianna.
Here.
Jasmine.
Here.
Aaliyah.
Here.
Mark. Micah.
Here.
Josh.
Here.
Alexandra. Cooper. Mayan.
Here.
Iratzi.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Michaela.
Here.
Finn. Logan. Marissa. Zane.
Here.
Marissa, you're here. And Ian. Zane, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone I did not call? Did I miss anyone? All right, good. So we're going to do a little bit of a review. Before we add on new material, and I'm going to give you guys a link on the chat. You're going to log into Jamboard. And we'll do the review together. All right, so I sent you guys a link. Go ahead and click on that link, and then it'll take you to a Jamboard. Awesome. Now I'm going to share the screen. You can look on your screen, your own screen. So what I found a lot is that it's sometimes easier to remember things when you write things down. So as much as you can, try to use your memory of what we discussed last week. using your notes is fine as well. So if you've never used a Jamboard, the way you write on the whiteboard is to take this on the left side where the cursor is, right underneath it, there's a little sticky note. You pick your color, and that's how you'll paste your what you're going to be writing on the board. So we talked about essentials for life, right? And these are body functions that are so important for overall health. So I want you, as much as you can, I want you to write down whatever you can remember, all the essentials for life that you can look in your notes. All right, and then when you click on it, it'll post. So what are some essentials for life? Heat, Jacob, if you just joined us, here's a link to the Jamboard. Go ahead and log in to click on the link. It'll take you to what we're working on right now. All right, so we have food, home, water. So we're talking about essentials for life. Yes, they're important, but are they essentials for life? Remember our notes. So home would not be considered that. Homeostasis is not. Well, I'll let you guys list it and then we'll go through it. So it's really important for you guys to know the essentials for life because you will be tested on it. So remember, this class is note heavy. You should be taking a lot of notes when I lecture as well as using the PowerPoint to your advantage. Okay, we're missing quite a bit. I'm going to move things to the right that are not considered essentials for life. Yes, it's important to have these factors, but it's not essential for life. And I can't even read this one. All right, you guys are missing quite a bit. Organ systems, we're gonna kind of leave this here. If you just came into the room, here is a link to what we're working on. So go ahead and click on the link and log in. All right, guys, here we go. Here are some things that are being listed correctly. No. All right, so now I can see where some of you guys are catching our notes. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys some clues, right? And then you guys are gonna write it down, try to figure out what it is. This is one essential for life is the ability to have, for the interior to be protected from the exterior environment. What is that called? Yes, boundaries, whoever wrote boundaries, absolutely. Next one, the ability for us to be mobile and for ability to have involuntary and involuntary movement in the body. What do we need? Movement, absolutely. This is what I mean about essentials for life. No, not hard. So I'm gonna move things that are not part of this category. Yes, it is important, but it's not part of the category we're trying to get at. Thank you. Growth. Absolutely. I'm going to move the nutrients a little bit over here. Right. And I'm going to delete some duplicates just to make room. Responsiveness. Absolutely. Growth. Yes. Nutrients. What about the ability for our cells to regenerate? Because they do degenerate quite often. No, not circulation. No. Okay, what did we call that? The ability for our body to regenerate, reproduction, there it is. Responsiveness, but let's check our spelling. Responsiveness. We have growth. So I'm gonna just delete the duplicates. All right, what about the ability for their body to break down nutrients at the molecular levels for absorption? Right, we definitely need that for essential for life, because the only time our body absorbs food is at the molecular level. And also for our ability for our body to use food as fuel, metabolism. There you go. Excellent. All right. Now, when it comes to nutrients, well, nutrients and all this falls under what main category? Who remembers? I'm gonna write that for you guys. It's survival. So under survival, I'm gonna put it here. Metabolism goes here. Right, so under survival, we talked about nutrients. And whoever's on here, feel free to move. What are our nutrients that falls under survival? Yes, I know it's food, but what kinds of food? All right, so I'm just deleting just to make room, and we can just duplicates. Water. And what are part of the nutrients? Protein, right? What else? Fat. And what are macronutrients? Oops, let's make this smaller. Missing one, very, very important macronutrients. What's wrong with this thing? Here. Lipids, carbs, and protein, right? So lipids are your fats, carbohydrates we need, it's your first source of energy, and the only thing that's going to fuel your brain. And protein, we need that for cell growth and repair. Nucleic acid, no. All right, then we have our nutrients, which is our carbs, protein, and fat, our macronutrients. So meaning we need an abundance of it, right? Water. What about micronutrients? What is considered nutrients? These are your vitamins and your minerals, right? Okay, also what we need for survival is oxygen. So I don't want to see air, because air consists of other elements. So I want you guys to be specific and put oxygen. If you answered air in a quiz, I would probably mark that incorrect or give you a partial credit. I want you to, because there's also air, there's air within the air there's substances in the air, but we're specifically looking for oxygen because we need oxygen in our red blood cells so that it can be transported to our organs so that we can be kept alive. So specifically oxygen. I'm going to take air out. Food and water we got, so I'm going to take that out. Absorption. Okay, oxygen we got already. Absorption, no. I'm gonna take that out. Also under the survival, we're also looking for, there's one last element under survival. Let me see if somebody wrote it on here. One very important thing, right, for us to even take in the oxygen. Yes, thank you. We need atmospheric pressure. We need a very specific amount of pressure for survival. If we were to go up in space, right, where there's very little atmospheric pressure, or different kinds of atmospheric pressure, I would say, we probably wouldn't be able to survive without anything to help us survive in there. But atmospheric pressure is really, really important. As we obviously go up, right, in above sea level, as we go higher and higher, oxygen level starts to diminish. So we need to do other things to be able to survive at higher levels above water. All right, and then let's see, we're missing one last thing. Under survival would be our, let me type it in, body temperature. It's really important for us to survive to maintain a very specific body temperature. And who remembers what that body temperature is? A normal body temperature.
.6.
Yeah, that's it. Good job, Ian. 98.6 is very important. If we have, if either it goes slightly higher or even lower, right, we feel a difference. And if it goes too high or too low, then that's detrimental. All right, so you need to know the essentials for life. You need to know the, and I'll show you the PowerPoint where it's located. You also need to start logging into your books. You don't need the course ID to log into the book. I will give you the course ID. The course ID is only merely to put all of us together in one class, but you still have access to the book regardless of the course ID. So I would highly recommend that you guys start, if you haven't already, please start looking at your book and reviewing your notes compared to what's in the chapter. You're not gonna do well in this class just by lecture alone. There are some things in the book that you'll have to take a look at, right? If I do schedule a test or a quiz, I usually take the class time before the scheduled quiz for review. All right, let's talk about why these aren't considered here on the right, why these are not considered essentials for life, right? When we talk about this category, and these are bodily functions that are important for us for overall health. So I want to start off with things that are more emotional, I would say, right? So these things, warmth, I guess would pertain to body temperature, but it doesn't have to always be warm because we can survive in cold, right? But I think you're referring to body temperature. Okay, we have water, we have nutrients right here. And let's see, we have this. All right, so these are considered not necessarily essential, right? A lot of people, a lot of countries don't have very little clothing. They're going to survive. Self-care, a lot of people don't do self-care, even in the United States. Right, one of the richest countries in the world, people, so you don't need this to survive. Happiness, are you kidding? Isn't there so many people you guys know that are not happy and they're always upset? So this is relative, right? Happiness is relative. Exercise. Yeah, it is great to exercise, obviously. That's why I'm in this business, but it is also not, you'd be surprised, about 88% of our population do not exercise. 88%, that's a huge number. And when we refer to exercise, it just means being able to elevate our, let's say, our heart rate for an extended period of time, being able to stress our body. So no, and fitness also, right? There's a lot of people who aren't fit, a lot of people who don't participate in fitness. So that's why this is not considered a essentials for life. Let me just put, for those of you guys just joined us, I am sending you a link to the Jamboard. Circulation, organ systems, respiration, heart circulatory system. These are all organ systems not considered part of this category. Do we need it to survive? Yeah, but there's also mechanisms, medical intervention that can help us survive if our specific circulation fails, if our heart fails, right? Our organ systems. So this is not what I'm looking for. Nucleic acid. I mean, if you're referring to DNA, we need DNA, obviously. We have our own essential DNA, our own specific DNA map. So this does not fall in this category. And then this we already talked about. Okay. Okay, so next review. I want you to define in your own words what homeostasis is. Or you can define it as a book term. What is it? What does this mean to you? Homeostasis.
Like maintaining like the same temperature, like pH levels and stuff.
Part of it, yeah. So take a sticky and then go ahead and write what you feel homeostasis is, and let's build this board right here. So I want you to give me a general term. That's maybe what could happen with somebody, Ian, right? Somebody's body is trying to look for pH, but sometimes they never get a pH balance, whatever that means. Keeping your body balanced, keeping a stable internal environment, maintaining some same stable internal factors, balance inside your body, keeping a stable internal environment, balance of survival. Adapting to the environment. Good, keep going. Good. Those of you guys who are not participating, I highly suggest, even if you were to just copy what somebody wrote, because you'll find that once you type it out, you actually have to think about the words. It helps you remember. All right, so we're seeing a lot of keywords, right? Stable, stability, maintaining nutrient levels. Not necessarily nutrient levels, right? No, so I'll clarify that. When we're maintaining nutrient levels, that's a choice, isn't it? Right, it's what, so it's not nutrient levels. So your book definition is this. That's your book definition. Stable internal body environment needed for survival. All right, good. Equilibrium. Keeping the body balanced, yeah. So the body always wants to find a path of least resistance, right? The straight line. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So the body, that's the body's job. It's always going to try to find something. If your stomach's upset, it's going to try to excrete whatever you ate, right? One way or the other. If you are cold, right, we shiver. If you're hot, we sweat. So those are ways that the body automatically responds. If we lose one of our 5 senses, the other senses are heightened. So that's the way that the body tries to always find homeostasis. All right, very good. Okay, so I want you to define anatomy, and I want you to define physiology. So we need to know the difference between anatomy and physiology. Good. Anatomy is the structure of the body parts and how it's organized. Excellent. How the body works, physiology. Good. Function of the body. Excellent. So it's the body is the body, but physiology focuses more on what happens to the body. So I want you guys, when you define anatomy this way, just be specific, right? Anatomy is not the body. Anatomy are the structures in the body, right? And how it's, who wrote that? And how it's organized. It is not just the body. So be careful with that definition. Okay, good. Yeah, structure in the body parts. All right, nice job, guys. Excellent. Logan, if you just joined us, we're on the Jamboard. Here's the link. All right, excellent. Good job, guys. All right, so last review. Now that we know what anatomy and physiology is, so on this side, we're going to list the classifications of anatomy. And on the other side, we're going to write the classifications of physiology. All right, so we want to know classifications. So within anatomy and within physiology, there needs to be classifications for both sections. All right, we need to keep everything organized. So systemic, regional, macro, microscopic, gross, so gross anatomy, we know it to be parts of the anatomy that we do not need a microscope. So these are bigger parts, right? So if you look at someone's shoulder, that would be considered gross anatomy. Let's see, what does it say? I can't read it. Developmental. Patho. So pathological anatomy, no, is pathophysiology. So let's change that. Not systemic physiology. Cell physiology. No. I think you guys are confusing anatomy. So classifications of physiology would be respiratory physiology, right? So that's an example. What are some other ones? So we have respiratory, cardiovascular. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. Cardiovascular physiology. Organ. We're talking about renal. That's are you referring to renal physiology? Okay, and then I'm going to help you guys so we can finish this. So we have, did we get cardiovascular? So we have renal physiology, and then we have renal and neural. Renal and neural. All right, and then within the classifications of anatomy, we were talking about microscopic. Did somebody write microscopic? Here. Within microscopic, there's two parts of microscopic, right? So this is where we need an actual microscope. So we're looking at cellular, cytology, and histology, right? That falls under the microscopic anatomy. All right, so I'm gonna stop here. And then I'm gonna show you guys a PowerPoint of where, not crytology, cytology. All right, so let's stop. Let's go ahead and stop the Jamboard. And then we're going to go into our PowerPoint because I want to show you guys where you need to be looking at these notes. All right, so let's frame. Let's close this out. And then, okay, so let's have everyone come back to the PowerPoint on my screen. Here are your essentials for life, guys. This is what you need to be looking at. Starting on slide 13. Right, here are your list of essentials for life. Please know them for future quizzes. Please know them. Here's your survival. What falls under survival are nutrients. Remember, our nutrients consist of carbs, protein, and fat, and so on. Know the amount of water that we need on the average. Obviously, you need to increase it as you exercise, or if you sweat a lot, like in different types of temperature, or even when you exercise, a lot of us tend to sweat differently. All right, so this is kind of where we left off on homeostasis. So most of you guys in here, I would say majority of you guys kind of have an understanding of what homeostasis is. So it's a stable, the ability for the body to find a stable internal environment that it needs to survive. If you let's just say you fell into really, really cold water, right? You're in ice cold water and you lost your boat and you're in there. A mechanism your body starts to do is actually starts to slow everything down. It makes you sleepy. It's trying to conserve energy. After you're shivering, but eventually you just fall asleep. So that's kind of an example of homeostasis for survival. Internally, then if we're talking about, for example, if you lose the loss of let's say your eyesight, your hearing gets better, or you start hearing better, you start being more in tune with your environment. And you can try it. Go into tonight when you're in your room, turn off you can make it as dark as you can, and just sit there and see if you start all of a sudden picking up these small noises that you've never noticed before. Right? Try those things. Now, when our body finds homeostasis, there is a very specific mechanism, and this is what we call homeostatic mechanism. It's the ability for the body to regulate the body by negative or positive feedback. So we're going to go into the steps of a homeostatic mechanism. So the body mostly uses the nervous and our endocrine system for homeostatic control. Audio regulation or intrinsic regulation. So intrinsic meaning internal, occurs when the body adjusts its activities because of an environment change, such as a decline in oxygen levels, which causes the cells to release chemicals that widen blood vessels and provide more oxygen. So if you go to Mammoth, or if you go, like let's say to Denver, which is a mile above sea level, oxygen's diminishing, oxygen levels are lower. So our blood vessels start to open up so that our blood vessels can get more oxygen from the oxygen that's already in our blood. And that's kind of how it adjusts to that, right? It realizes that there's a constriction, there's restriction of the available oxygen. So this is an auto regulation. Does it automatically? You don't have to think, you don't have to tell your blood vessels to open up, it does it automatically. Extrinsic regulation is related to the nervous and endocrine system as well. An example would be an increased exercise. Increased exercises causes the nervous system to increase heart rate and blood circulation. So extrinsic regulation would be, so when you exercise, right? If you exercise and then you take your blood pressure, and I'll show you guys how to do that correctly, or I'm sorry, your heart rate, it's going to go up while you're creating stress. Exercise is stress for the body. Your BP actually starts to go down, blood pressure actually starts to go down, but your heart rate will go up. And then blood circulation will increase because blood needs to go into your muscles and your respiratory system to keep moving the oxygen. So that's an extrinsic regulation. So just remember this: auto regulation or intrinsic is automatic, right? The body automatically adjusts based on the environment, and extrinsic regulation is imposed stress on the body, and your body starts to adjust based on the imposed stress on the body. So the homeostatic control, there's three components that are required. And I hope this slide has a picture. Yeah, it does, okay. So how does it adjust? So the homeostatic control is the three components that are involved in order for the body to make these adjustments, for it to auto-regulate and for it to regulate extrinsic from the extrinsic environment. You need a receptor. So receptors monitor the internal environment, right? Receptors are kind of the feelers, the ones that are just determining, okay, everyone okay in here? It's checking all your organs, it's checking all your systems to make sure that the environment is constantly stable, right? Those are receptors. Control center determines the body's set point. So your control center is the range or level that must be maintained, right? So the control center is determining getting a message from the receptor and the control center saying, okay, then based on what you're telling me, I'm going to adjust the body to these levels, this point. So that's the control center. They're like the people at the, you know, like if you're like a soundboard at a music studio, you're the person changing the equilibrium and the bass and the treble. Effectors allow the control center to respond. So effectors are the ones, either via negative or positive feedback, are the ones that will then make the change. They make things happen. So you have the receptors, the control centers, and the effectors. So this is how it works. This is your mechanism. And my suggestion to you is you guys have to know the steps of the mechanism. You guys feel free to ask or interrupt me at any point, right? If you have a question. If you need me to slow down a bit, I might be going a little too fast for you. That's okay. So here's your steps. Stimulus, right? Body gets a stimulus. There has to be stimulus from an external environment. The example we used was the heat. That's our stimulus. Then our receptors, right? We talked about what our receptors do. They monitor the internal environment. So the receptors gets the stimulus, checks within to look for, is everyone okay? Is it getting too hot in here? Right? It's determining, okay, it's getting too hot internally. Then it tells the control center, hey, it's getting too hot in here. What should we do? Your control center then starts to figure out, okay, where are we going to regulate? Our body temperature is starting to go up. We need to be at 98.6. So I need to cool off the body. So remember, our control center determines the body set point. Then the control center tells the effectors, the muscles or the glands, telling it, hey, we need to be at 98.6, but we're starting to go up. So I need you to start sweating, releasing, right? Let's cool the skin. Our organ, largest organ is in our body is our skin. So I want you to start cooling the skin. So the effectors then make it happen, right? The glands, endocrine system then starts to release some hormones to start creating some kind of response to what the control center is telling it to do, what it wants it to do. So the effectors make it happen. And then the response is the actual change. So the response then in this example would be sweating, right? And then eventually the body cools back down to the normal set point that the control center told it to. So this is a visual of your homeostatic mechanism. We always need some kind of stimulus. The receptors are feeling something's happening, sends a message to the control center. Control center determines a set point, tells then the effectors, the muscles or the glands to do something, right? This is what I want you to do in order to get back to the set point, to find homeostasis, and then a response happens. But I want you guys to really look at this, right? Isn't this also, can't this idea be applied to everyday scenarios? So I want you to be able to look at this, right? And not overthink it. And just know it's something that we do on a regular basis. So here's an example. Stimulus is you guys logged into Schoology and realized that I gave you 0 on a quiz. What's your receptor? What would you be considered your receptor? Remember, our receptors are monitoring internal environment. What happens? Panic, right? Panic, you need to do something. And then you respond. Your control center then is, you come to me, or your teacher, any teacher, and you need to then say, hey, listen, I turned this in. Why did you give me a 0? I need to get back to my A. So your control center, your teacher, person in charge looks at your grade and say, yeah, I need you back in an A2. Sends a message out. Effectors, right? The effector is you actually either turning in the missing assignment, or I go in and change the grade to what you actually should have gotten, and then the change is corrected, then your grade goes back up. So the mechanism is the same really in everything. And the body responds in exactly the same way. Always finding homeostasis. Any questions on this? You guys okay? Everyone good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure that you guys understand this, right? So if we can do another example. Let's say that you're running on the field, football field, since there's a lot of divots on the field, and you sprain your ankle. What's the stimulus?
Would it be pain?
Yeah, pain, right? That's a stimulus. Right. So your pain receptors. So stimulus would be the ankle, and then immediately would be the pain receptor, right? Absolutely. And then what would be the control center, you think? So let me go back to the definition. So it determines a body set point. So the body senses there's something wrong, right? Your pain receptors is sending a message to your brain, which is your control center, really, and your central nervous system, your brain and your spine, saying, "Hey, there's something wrong down inferiorly down by the ankle, right? There's something going on there." So the control center determines, okay, there's a tear, or there's a sprain in the ankle. So the effectors would be inflammation, right? It starts to inflame. So the way when your body's injured internally, inflammation happens because it starts to heal. Automatically, there's a mechanism for healing. And then goes to response. And this response could be inflammation, and then also bruising, right? So all of that is because the blood is now, the control center is saying, okay, send blood in that injury site in order to heal, because the red blood cells will start to heal. And then that's where swelling and bruising start to occur. So that's another way to look at mechanism, right? A little bit more in depth, or homeostatic mechanism. Okay. So a negative feedback mechanism is one that prevents a correction of deviations from doing too much, which could possibly harm the body. It is more common than positive feedback and essential for balancing chemicals in the body. An example would be blood pressure regulation, production of red blood cells, thermoregulation of body temperature, and control of blood glucose levels. Negative feedback is essential for balancing body chemistry. So this is an example of when we talked about, if it's cold outside, our body starts to shiver. If it's hot outside, our body starts to sweat. So this is a negative feedback, right? It's essential for balancing body chemistry. If you're diabetic and your body cannot produce insulin in order to utilize the sugar in your blood, or there's too much sugar in your blood and your body creates more insulin for it to metabolize the sugar, that's a negative feedback. That's just essential for balancing the body. The opposite of it would be positive feedback. So this is what positive feedback mechanism makes conditions move away from the normal to stimulate further changes. These are usually short-lived and very specific, producing extreme responses. Cycles escalate as part of the positive feedback loop, usually when stressful or dangerous processes must occur quickly before homeostasis can be restored. Example, the blood clotting process that's here. So when you get a cut, whatever, it doesn't even matter how big the cut is, right? Could be a paper cut. The body automatically needs to clot in order so that the blood doesn't keep coming out of your arm. So that's considered a positive feedback. So it's moving away from the normal to stimulate change in order to fix it really quick, and then it starts to go back to control. Oxycontin increases contractions of uterus for the labor. So this is a chemical that if, let's say a woman has been in labor for a few hours, sometimes a few days, and the baby now is in stress, so they need to have her contract more in order to deliver the baby, they will give Oxycontin so that she'll have more contractions for labor. So positive feedback, and then so it's enhancing the contractions. It's very uncomfortable. I've never had it done, but from what I've heard and read, it's very uncomfortable because contractions hurt. But it's only short-lived in order to get the outcomes that they want, which is labor. Does this make sense to you guys, the positive feedback?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, just want to make sure. Again, look into your book and you can read a little bit more about it if you need to, but come to me for that. So homeostatic imbalance. So this is why when we were doing the Jamboard, when we talked about essentials for life, and somebody did write homeostasis, and I said, no, it doesn't really fall under essentials for life, because there are situations where there's an imbalance, that the body is unable to find homeostasis, even though that's the ultimate responsibility. But in many cases, it's unable to, and this is where disease comes in. Deficiencies of aging increase risks for illness. Aging causes body systems to become less efficient and more uncontrollable, increasing risk for illness. So as we age, there are age-related diseases. And I'm sure you've seen it either with grandparents or with parents. You guys notice maybe as they get older, they're not as active, or now they're maybe seeing the doctor more for no other reason other than just aging, right? There's a tendency for our eyesight to just degenerate as we get older. Even if you go through the laser, where they correct your eyesight where you don't have to wear glasses anymore, eventually that treatment or that procedure, it doesn't work anymore because there's just age-related issues with the eye. Destructive positive feedback can overwhelm negative feedback, such as in the forms of heart failure. So other examples include abdominal injury due to physical trauma, sepsis, metabolic acidosis, and metabolic alkalosis. So these are situations where, there's physical trauma, like being punched in the stomach or falling onto something, and there's issues where the body just can't find homeostasis. Other risks or deficiencies of aging can be slowed down, I guess you can say. For example, osteoporosis, right? When the integrity of bone density diminishes, and if you take the bone and look under a microscope and there's little tiny holes in it, our bone density does diminish as we get older, and in this class you will learn how bone density is actually created through muscle resistance training. But if you don't do resistance training, strength training, your bone density actually doesn't diminish, but you don't grow a lot of bone matrix if you don't continue to do strength training. So you guys at this age, especially you boys, between now and the age of about 23, 24, this is the highest level of testosterone you will make. Once you turn and for all of us, once you turn about 23, 24, your metabolism starts to go down, and it's that young. So start now if you're not doing it already. Start exercising, start doing strength training, cardiovascular training. Get the best out of these years, because when you go into the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, you have those age-related diseases that come anyways. So, but if you can slow that process down, right? If you can make the gap bigger now, then do that now. So part of being in sports medicine is understanding all of those changes so that we can help clients improve their current life so that they live in pain-free. No, we are not taking roids. So if you take roids, right, you're going to increase your chances of cancer, testicle cancer. You'll also, yeah, it'll shrink. Absolutely, Emmanuel. So being in understanding really that all your organ systems, and we will get into other organ systems, they all are related, right? One will affect the other, is really, really important. Yeah, depression and rage too. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right, Emmanuel. And it's cheating, right? Don't you guys think it's cheating too? Like, I'd rather win at something. Yes, Ian. I'd rather win at something with hard work and my own ability rather than cheating. Once you cheat, you always cheat. It's because because if you get away with it, then you feel like you can always get away with it. All right. All right. Any questions on the homeostatic balance and mechanism? So before we get into the body cavities and the body parts, why don't we take a quick break, right? 10 minutes. Let's come back at 10. Let's just come back at 10:10. So I'm gonna put on a timer. You guys get up and stretch. Do 10 jumping jacks to wake you guys up. And I will put on a timer, and I will see you guys back at 9. Let's just stick to the timer, 9:48. All right, let's come back. Everyone here?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. All right. So now now we're going to be talking about the organizations of the body. Now we understand that the body always wants to right itself, find balance, and that we need certain things in order for us to even be alive, right? So now we got to go into our anatomy and really now understand all the parts of the anatomy. So the body's made up of body cavities and membranes. So when we think of the word cavity, think of, when you have a cavity in your tooth, right, there's a hole. So something that's holding something when you think of that term cavity. There's two main ones. There's a dorsal cavity. And this protects the organs of the nervous system, protects the brain and our spinal cord. So think of a dorsal fin of a dolphin, right? It's usually at the top. If you see it in the water, it's usually at the top. Think of our head protects the brain, and then our spinal cord. So it's usually at the top of the dolphin's spine. Ventral cavity contains most body's organs. So ventral is subdivided into two: our thoracic cavity and our abdominal pelvic cavity. So dorsal cavity protects the brain and the spinal cord, which is our central nervous system. This is our control center. So CNS, central nervous system. Your heart could stop, but if your brain is still functioning, you're considered still alive. If it's the opposite, if your brain stops function, if there is no more brain activity, you're considered clinically dead. Because eventually the organs will start to fail one by one. It'll start to shut off. So this is our hub. So central nervous system. The ventral cavity has two cavities, subdivided into two cavities, our thoracic and our abdominal pelvic cavity. So the thoracic cavity is subdivided into lateral pleural cavities, lateral meaning to the side, like side by side, which surround each lung. So we know our lungs are side by side, right? So that's what lateral means. And the mediastinum. So medial means the center. When we refer to the medial part of our body, anything towards the center of the body is medial. When we refer to lateral side of the body, anything going away from the medial to the side. So that's lateral. So this contains the viscera or internal organs separated by a diaphragm. Your diaphragm is the main breathing muscle to your respiratory system, located deep behind your ribs, on the inside of your ribs. So separated by diaphragm. And mediastinum is a space in the thoracic cavity that contains our heart, trachea, esophagus, thymus gland. Actually, I'm going to, let me open up this app. I'm gonna give you guys a better visual. Give me 1 second. I think I should have done that earlier so you guys can see what I'm talking about. 3D. Okay, let me open it up. So I'm going to try to take this part slow. If you guys need me to go even slower, expand more, please let me know. Okay, so I'm going to share a different app. Actually, hold on, give me 1 second before I do that. I'm going to switch. Hold on, this thing is a little complicated. There it is. All right. All right, so here's our human body here. All right, so if I add the muscles, here are your muscles. Our thoracic cavity would be part of our thoracic spine. So thoracic spine would be the upper back here. This is your thoracic spine. So when we refer to the thoracic, thorax, it's anything that's in this region, this regional anatomy. When we talk about abdominal pelvic, abdominal, right? The key words are, the root words are abdominal. So our abs here, and then our pelvic area, which is our hips. So it would be all this region below our thoracic spine. So abdominal area and then our hips. So if we go right into our thoracic cavity, let me go back to the PowerPoint. Right, we're going into the heart. I lost my share. So I'm going to, let's see if I take off our, and let's see if I can add the heart. Right, here's our heart. So you can see that the heart is encased and protected by our thoracic cavity, right? Cavity again has something that where it contains something. So our ribs surround it. This is your sternum here, right? Protects it. Also found in our thoracic cavity is our trachea. So let's add our trachea. Right, this is your windpipe. Here's your trachea here. Also in our thoracic cavity is your esophagus. All right, our esophagus extends from the pharynx to the stomach. Food will go down our esophagus. You guys can see the heart beating. This is called a lub dub. Lub dub. Then also in our mediastinum, the space in the thoracic cavity that we're building, is our thymus gland. So I'm going to add the thymus gland. Okay, so these are the organs that are protected in our thoracic cavity. So our thymus is located in the superior thoracic aperture. When we refer to superior, that's directional. So we know that our central nervous system is our hub, right? It controls our entire body. So we refer to superior as anything in the direction of our brain, because that's the superior part of our body. So when I refer to superior, it's usually direction going up towards the brain. So the superior thoracic just means at the upper level, and that's this green right here, right? You guys see. All right, and then there's just kind of a different angle. Here's your heart, right? And there's the gland. Your trachea is here, and then your esophagus. Oh. Okay, there we go. Pretty cool, right? In my classroom, I actually have, if any of you guys have never been in there, I have a giant touchscreen computer, and that is actually a dissection table. So a lot of medical schools don't use cadavers anymore. When I was in school, I used cadavers. We'd have to actually, we were part of the medical team, not team, but department. And we would have to go into a big room with refrigerators, and we'd open the refrigerator and we'd have to take body parts and we'd dissect. People donated their body to science. So we actually had to use real bodies, but because they were, they had formaldehyde, they were all yellow, so we couldn't use color to differentiate different body parts. So now, because it's so expensive to have cadavers, and you have to get rid of them after a certain amount of years, because if one class goes in before you and they dissect the body part, and if they do it incorrectly, then the next person who uses that body part, the dissection's wrong, so it messes up kind of what you're learning. So now the trend is the dissection tables that people use, and it's a digital. It's a real MRI of a person's body, and you can actually dissect like this. What you guys are seeing is a more animated version. I do have the dissection on this computer, which we will get into in the next few weeks, so you can actually see what the true body looks like inside. For now, this is kind of to introduce you to the body parts. This is a good way to do it because it's more animated. All right. Any questions so far? Does this help you guys to use these visuals so you can kind of see the parts?
It does help a lot.
Okay, good, because I'd rather use this. I know for me too, right? So you can actually see it beating, which is really cool. And then you can also start to kind of see the function, right? And look at the stomach. This is your stomach. Your esophagus, food down, it goes into the stomach. Okay, excellent, good. Alexandra asked, how can you access this? This is actually a paid, I am trying to get you guys a virtual access to this for you to study. I do have, I submitted it to LAUSD for approval, and I'm just waiting. So if I can get approval for you guys to log into some, not this particular software, because this one's super expensive. I tried to get this one for you guys, but they were based out of Switzerland. And unfortunately, I couldn't bring a vendor from a different country. It was just so weird. If you want to buy this, you can, but it is, I don't even know what the student rate, it might be $50. Unless you plan to use this, you plan to go into college and use this, ask your parents, but don't do it yet, because if I can get it approved, I will give you guys your own login for a similar software. Because then if I can get you guys that'd be really cool for you guys to learn it this way, right? Where you can dissect yourself and you can go into, if we ever get back in the classroom, what I actually bought for this year, but COVID shut us down, and I'm really excited about it, and I was approved, are desktops that are going to come in, right? These computers, and it's, you guys know what the Oculus is? You guys know what Oculus is, right? It's
Yes.
like a
the headset, virtual headset.
Yeah, virtual reality. So this is a desktop with virtual reality glasses. I was gonna buy 5 that has a similar software. So you guys take these pens and you go in and you can take the heart out and it's in front of you. It's really cool. And then you feel it beating in your hand. So we can get back in the classroom. That's what I will be bringing in for you guys to learn the anatomy, which is such an amazing software. So let's all do our part, and hopefully this COVID will go away by next year. All right. So the abdominal cavity, and I'm going to stop sharing this so I can share go back to the PowerPoint, you know, it's going lower, right? So from the thoracic, you guys see where the thoracic is, abdominopelvic would be inferior of the thoracic. So if the brain is superior, anything going towards the feet, right? Our feet is the inferior part of the body. When I say inferior, so know that it's going below, it's going in the down direction towards our feet, right? Below whatever other part of the body I'm referring to. So abdominal pelvic cavity is inferior to the thoracic cavity. So abdominal cavity contains the stomach and all of these sections here. And then the pelvic cavity right below the stomach would be your urinary bladder, various reproductive organs, and our rectum. So let's build the abdominal cavity, and then we'll end the day there. So I'm gonna reshare my screen and then I'll clear it. So here is our model, right? So we've already built the organs that are in our thoracic cavity. Now we're going to go to the abdominal cavity. And the first thing that it says in our abdominal is our stomach, which you guys already see the stomach. Right, so that's our stomach right there. Here. Right, this is the body of the stomach. The next thing would be our spleen. So let's add our spleen. And there's our spleen, the green thing right there, here. So it's an organ of the lymphatic system that shares a similar structure of the lymph nodes. So anything that's part of the lymphatic system, which you guys will learn more about, is really for our immunity. So that's your spleen. Next in the abdominal cavity is our liver. So your liver is like your filtration system. So here's your liver. Here, this part right here. Spleen's down there, and then here's your liver. Okay. Oops, let's go back. So this is your filtration system. If you tend to, or not you, but if your parents or family or anybody has a high body fat percentage, they can get what they call a fatty liver. And the problem with that is then, like if they have high cholesterol, the problem with that is then it can't work effectively as a filtration system. So if things start to back up, then you can become septic. So really taking care of your liver, drinking a lot of water, eating the right foods, it's going to be really important. All right, then we have our pancreas. So let's type in our pancreas. So that's this guy back here. And this is for our digestive system. It's principally involved in the production of important hormones like insulin. And we know we need our insulin in order to utilize carbohydrates as fuel. So that would be this organ back here. That's your, there it is. Here. That's your pancreas. All right, next organ in the abdominal cavity would be our gallbladder. And by the way, there are free apps that you can, the anatomy apps that you can probably try on your phone. You just have to find it. All right, here's our gallbladder right here. This serves to store and concentrate the bile produced in the liver. So any waste products produced in the liver, the gallbladder helps with this. It's a digestive organ, helps utilize it. Now, sometimes when we don't have, maybe it depends on your diet, also maybe lack of enough water. the bile that's in here gets crystallized, and that's where they refer to as gallstones, and that can be expensive. I'm not expensive. That can be painful. So many times if people are susceptible to gallstones, they'll remove the gallbladder altogether. All right, next one. We have our intestines and our kidneys. So let's put in our intestines. We have our small and our large. So let's put in our small. And then let's put in our large. There you go. All right, this is all in your abdominal cavity, and you have other smaller little organs in there too. And they say that if you took out your intestines, right, and you took them to the tennis court, they are long enough that you can line the tennis court lines. You know the lines on the tennis court? You can actually line them. That's how long your intestines are. Pretty cool. All right, so that's your abdominal cavity, and we added the thoracic cavity. Now your pelvic cavity has all your reproductive and urinary organs. So let's put in our urinary bladder. All right, here's our urinary bladder. It's a hollow, distensible organ, meaning it expands with strong muscular walls. The bladder acts as a temporary reservoir for urine and lies behind the pubic symphysis, which is right here in your pelvic bone. Right here. Behind the pubic symphysis in the pelvis, its size and shape position vary during filling. So if you hold your pee, right, you don't pee regularly, this gets distended, it gets bigger. And obviously and then that gives you the sign that, oh yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom. That's where your urinary bladder is located. And then we know that everything else here would be reproductive organ depending on male or female, right? So your pubic symphysis is here. There's usually like a collagen right here. And then obviously all the muscular that's involved. So that is your pelvic cavity. Oh, we forgot the rectum. Okay, and that's back here. There's a final straight portion of the large intestine which terminates as the anus where the fecal matter is excreted. All right. Any questions? Somebody have a comment? Let me get this guy back down. All right, so there are your two body cavities, thoracic and your abdominal. And then in your PowerPoint and also in your book, here's a picture of what we just did and location. So again, lateral view just means a side view, anterior view, and we will go over planes and how we're going to map the body. Anterior view means anything in the front. So anterior, if I'm looking at you straight on your face, that's your anterior view. Anything behind you would be your posterior view. You could take notes now on this, but we will go into these directional terms more in depth. Lateral is to the side, away from midline or medial. All right, I think I'm going to stop here before we get any further. Any questions? Anybody need clarification?
Can you upload the slides?
It's there. It's been there.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
It's under a folder called Lecture PowerPoints. Study guides. So don't forget though, you guys should still be accessing your book, right? You guys should be logging on and looking at your chapter 1. It's going to give you even more details. Any questions on anything else? You guys, the only thing that was due was a heat illness. Let me just double check to see. Yeah, and the only thing I'm gonna, because Monday's a holiday. You guys know that we have Monday off. I want you guys to just review your chapter 1. I'm not gonna assign homework this week. And then when I see you guys next week, we're gonna go into the organ systems. And then we'll do some in-class work. All right, so if nobody has anything else, you guys are excused, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, ma'am.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.
Have a good week.
Thank you,
Bye.
Miss.
Have a good week.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye, miss.
Bye.